so excited you're here because this week we're going to start talking about one of the best known musicians in the Bible, David. Have you guys heard of David before? I'm sure many of you have. Maybe some of you haven't, but I encourage you, pay close attention over the next few weeks because I think God has something cool he wants to teach you. Now, over the next few weeks, I want you to think about this question. How is Jesus the perfect king? We'll be learning about how David was a king, but he definitely was not perfect. He messed up a lot. But Jesus is our perfect king. How is that? Now, before we get started today, I want to know who is watching. Could you do me a favor and ask your parents to comment on Facebook or YouTube and tell me that you're here? Awesome. Well, I'm super excited to play a game with you today. But before that, I've been playing my violin, but I have another instrument at home called a mandolin, and it's broken. Yeah. It's broken, and I don't have the right tools to fix it. I need to bring it to someone who has the right tools so that they can repair it. Because if I try to do it, I'm either not going to be able to fix it at all, or I might cause more damage than was already there. So that leads me to today's game, which is called Up for the Task. In today's game, I have some tools that match a particular task. I'm going to show you the tools, and then I'm going to tell you some things that need to be done, and you get to choose what tool is going to be used for the job. Let me show you what I have. First of all, I have a towel. Yes, you probably didn't think that a towel was a tool, but it is. You're about to find out. Then I have some duct tape, a pair of socks, an oven mitt, baking soda, a hairdryer. Those are the tools I have. Now, let me tell you the different tasks. I want you to keep track of what tool you're going to choose to use for that task. You can write it down on a piece of paper or just keep track of it in your head, and I'll tell you the answers at the end. All right, you ready? My first task is to open a very hot door on a car. So if you were opening a really hot car door, which of these tools would you use? Oven mitt, socks, duct tape, baking soda, hairdryer, or towel? Which one would you use? Okay, you got it? You got your tool figured out? All right, my next task is this. I was playing with my dog and my black shirt got hair all over it. What should I use to remove the hair? Which one of these tools would you use? The oven mitt, the socks, duct tape, hairdryer, baking soda, towel. Got it? Okay, next task. Now, I moved a couple weeks ago and I needed to pack some breakable items, some things that could break easily like mugs and glasses. What should I use to keep those items safe in the moving boxes? Which one would you use? Oven mitt, socks, duct tape, baking soda, hairdryer, or towel? What do you think? You got your answer? Okay, next task. My table is really dusty. What should I use to dust the table? Which of these tools would you use? Go ahead and choose. All right, next task. The mirror in my bathroom is super steamy. What should I use to get rid of the steam on the mirror? You choose which tool you would want to use for that. And my last task is this. There is a grease fire on the stove. Which of these tools should I use to put out that fire? What would you use? All right, do you have all of your tools written down or kept track of in your head? All right, I'm gonna give you the answers. For that really hot car door, I would use an oven mitt. It is designed to keep your hand from getting burned when touching hot metal surfaces, like an oven or a hot car door. What about that hair on the shirt? Duct tape. It's sticky, and that sticky side can help take the hair off of a shirt. For those fragile items, the things that might break in the box, I would use a towel to wrap them up and keep them safe in the box. Now, what about that dust on the table? You guessed it, I could use some socks. Probably some old socks that I don't use for my feet anymore. And for that steamy mirror, probably a hairdryer. The heat in the hairdryer would help evaporate the condensation that's on the mirror from the steam. It works super well. And for that grease fire, baking soda will do the trick. It will help put that grease fire out. Now, what if your task was to defeat a giant? What tools would you use for that? Probably not any of these ones, right? Now, today's Bible story is about a young boy. Find out what tool he used as he went into battle. Check it out.
Saul was the king of Israel, but he disobeyed God. So God chose a new king for Israel, a better king. God sent Samuel to Bethlehem to visit a man named Jesse. One of Jesse's sons would be Israel's next king. Jesse had 8 sons. Jesse's oldest son was tall and handsome. When Samuel saw him, he thought, this must be the one God chose to be king. But God told Samuel, he's not the one. Do not pay attention to what he looks like. You look at what you can see on the outside, but I see the heart. One by one, Jesse's sons approached Samuel, but God had not chosen them either. Do you have any more sons? Samuel asked. Yes, Jesse said. My youngest son, David, is in the field taking care of the sheep. Jesse sent for David. When David arrived, God told Samuel, he's the one. Samuel anointed David. He poured oil on David's head to show God had chosen him to be the king. The Spirit of the Lord was with David, and Samuel went back home. When the Philistines gathered an army to fight Israel, King Saul got his army ready too. The Philistines had a great warrior named Goliath. Goliath shouted at the Israelites, "Send me your best man and we'll fight one-on-one." But none of the Israelites wanted to fight Goliath. They were afraid of him. One day, Jesse told David to take food to the battlefield. David's brothers were in Israel's army. David saw Goliath and how the Israelites were so afraid. David turned to King Saul and said, "I'll fight him." David had fought off lions and bears. He trusted God to keep him safe. Saul offered his armor to David, but it was too heavy. Instead, David chose 5 smooth stones from a nearby stream and met Goliath armed only with the stones and a slingshot. Goliath made fun of David because he was a young boy. But David said, "You come to fight with a spear and sword, but I come to fight in the name of God. God always wins his battles." David ran toward Goliath. He slung a rock and hit Goliath in the forehead. Goliath fell face down, and David killed him. The Israelites won the battle, and the Philistines ran away. David did not look like a king or a mighty warrior, but God chose him to be king over Israel and gave him victory over Goliath. The Israelites were too weak and afraid to face Goliath. They needed David to fight on their behalf. In a similar way, though Jesus did not look like a warrior or a king, we need him to fight for us. Jesus gives us victory over sin and death.
Wow, so many cool
David
things happened to
did not
David
look-
in that story. God was working in David's life. God chose David to be king because he knew that David trusted him no matter what. Now, David led the children of Israel into battle, and he defeated the Philistine with a sling and a stone. How cool is that? God was with him, and God brought the victory. That reminds me of Jesus. Jesus, when we trust in him, we get to share in his victory over sin and death. Jesus is the greatest hero, and he saves us. Let me read you a verse that David himself actually wrote about God. This is what he says. It's in Psalm chapter 145, verse 13. And he says this, "Your kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and your dominion endures through all generations. The Lord is faithful to all his promises and loving toward all he has made." Wow. God is the best king. He is faithful. He will never go back on his word. If he says he's going to do something, you bet he will do it. And that verse says that God loves you so much because he made you. All right. My question for you today is this. Why is it important that God sees our hearts? What do you think? Why is that important? I encourage you to talk with your parents about that this week and your siblings and find out, why is it important that God sees our hearts? Just like he saw David's heart and his brother's hearts. Now, I gotta say thank you to Paul and Abigail and Elise and Eleanor. Thank you so much for joining me today. I also am super glad that Promise and Elijah were here, and Daniel and Johanna and Matthew. It is good to have you with us today. Hi to Ike, and hi Joneses and Elena and Stella and Talia. I sure miss you guys so much. And thank you to the Lancasters and the Ratliffs for joining. I miss you guys. I hope you have an awesome week. Come back next week to learn more about David. Now, there are some super cool musicians and singers who are getting ready to lead us into worship. I hope that you will join me for worship. If you're at home, you can stand up and dance around and sing at the top of your lungs, just like David. And pay attention to the message. I believe God has something he wants to speak to you. And remember, God loves you, and he has a big plan for your life.